Thank you. Thank you for having us. And I just want to thank the co-founders and the organizers for having the courage to talk about inclusion in a time when we just found out Cisco or Microsoft, the number of people that they have in their corporation compared to the 61%. Microsoft just shut out for me 61. This is a 2014 data. 61% of the employees of Microsoft are white, and only 3% are African American, and 7% Hispanic. I think that's something to discuss about and to really have a much deeper discussion. So I'm very happy this is what's happening. But our group is going to talk about how do you create an inclusive ecosystem, technology ecosystem. And for that to happen, I just hope that we all understand we don't want to just shrub and go through the discussion. I just hope that you really think through and say, do we want to just talk about it, or we have a way of really creating that community we want to see happening in wherever we are. And so because in Silicon Valley or here in San Francisco, we have a diverse community, and so we want to make sure that our corporations and our communities look alike. And that, I think, is a true diversity. So with that, I'm just going to ask our panelists. I have to tell you, I was studying a little bit about them. They're incredible, from an activist to a developer to making community engagement, someone creating creating the school in Africa to really create the next generation of software engineers. So I just thought maybe if you could introduce yourself and say something about what this means to you, creating a community.
Start with me?
Yes, start with you. Of course, I'm looking at
you. You want to start with the troublemaker.
Exactly. Thank you.
Now, my name is Carl Davis Jr., and I'm the president of the Silicon Valley Black Chamber of Commerce. And I've just become, thank you, I appreciate that. I've just become chamber president for the last 2 years, even though in 1990 I helped start the chamber. Now, the reason I gave you that background is because years ago in 1990, there were some issues that I saw then that are still issues today. People will clamor about, access to capital and access to resources, but there's access to relationships that lead to contracts. That's very important. So I won't take up all the group's time, but do you know what a Chamber of Commerce does? Our whole job is to actually help people get into business, help them finance their business, help them grow their business, and we even help them exit their business, hopefully for more profit.
Going down the line? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Audrey. I'm the CEO of Moringa School. Moringa School, we're we're a coding accelerator based in Kenya, and we're scaling across Africa as I speak. So far, 100% of our students have gotten jobs, also 100% loan repayment rate. The reason that tech inclusion means a lot to me, sorry. All right. The reason it means a lot to me is because growing up in the US, all the crazy amounts of opportunity that we get are ones that students in Africa don't get as easily. So for me, the reason I care so much is because I really believe that changing the narrative in Africa and not seeing the continent or even like the countries there as, we want to help them and they're always like below us, but actually seeing them as our peers and making them better than they could possibly even think of. So that's kind of where my standpoint on the issue.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Felecia Hatcher. I am the co-founder of Code Fever Miami, as well as Black Tech Week. And Code Fever is essentially a startup and coding school based in Miami, Florida, that serves the Tri-County area there, with a focus on serving the African American and Caribbean community that has essentially been left out of the ecosystem that has been built over the past few years in Miami. And then Black Tech Week is essentially our conference that we put on the last week of Black History Month as a way to interject technology, innovation, and creativity into the programming that usually takes place, so that we're not only celebrating the people who have brought us here, but then we're also celebrating and matching the resources to the people who have been doing some phenomenal stuff in our community and across the globe.
Me? Hi, my name is Konda Mason, and I am one of the co-founders and the CEO of Impact Hub Oakland. We are a co-working community in Oakland, and have kind of very quickly, we are a year and a half old, become kind of a real a hub of Oakland in many ways, where community from all stratas have come. It's like the watering hole. I think of it as the watering hole where everybody comes to drink. And so one of the things that we are focusing on, of course, is tech, which has been, as you all probably know, Oakland is just kind of growing bigger and bigger in that area. And we are looking at, we have a tech equity programming track, and that programming track is exactly what it sounds like, really trying to bring the equity within the tech field. And so we're doing a lot of stuff, and one of the things that, when I think about citywide ecosystem, is, I don't know if you all are familiar, some of you probably are, that Oakland was just, by an anonymous donor, $34 million was given to Oakland. Wow. And that money was beautifully done, very smartly done. A whole ecosystem it was like, you know, if you give money somewhere and if you don't do it here, then it's not going to work. Well, they thought it out very well. Wow. And it's a beautiful ecosystem of who got the money. And so one of the things that we are doing as Impact Hub Oakland, we hold space and we facilitate, and we are all about collaboration. So we are in the thrust of working with San Francisco Foundation right now and creating bringing everyone together who received those funds, and really looking at how do we leverage, how do we become more of an ecosystem, and really work together in ways that we probably would have stayed silo, you know, with our bank account, as opposed to how can we do way more by working together. So those are the things that we're working on right now. That is, the mayor's office is involved, everybody's involved, and it's a citywide initiative that that is really came out of nowhere, actually, for us about a month ago.
That's wonderful. Let me just say something that I think is very important to creating any kind of ecosystem. So I run the Step Up Silicon Valley. It's one of the largest social innovation network in Silicon Valley, where we actually develop strategies on how to reduce poverty in Silicon Valley. Just so you know, yes, there is poverty in Silicon Valley, and it's pretty bad. 22%, 18 to 22% of that population cannot make ends meet. It makes no sense. To me personally, it doesn't make any sense. I come from sub-Saharan Africa, and I did not have a clue that actually there could be such poverty in the valley or here in San Francisco. This comes from the living cost. There's so many different variables that play a role. But what I wanted to suggest and have a discussion on it, to create a citywide and ecosystem of technology inclusion, you really have to think at the beginning of a child's life. If we cannot create a system that is going to educate children of Latinos and African American and other minorities, we will not have this work diverse that we have right now, that you are, because there are so many children left behind. So I just want to put it out to the panelists, say, how would you create a citywide technology inclusive system? Let's say, use any example that you could use, but what are the strategies to make those things happen?
Well, I'll start off. Plus, I want to say something that I didn't say earlier to make the conversation relevant from a Black Chamber of Commerce point of view. We know as a Chamber of Commerce, our job or our core business is to, support those who are wanting to get into business, aspiring to get into business, people who are in business. But we know that if we don't turn around and look back into the education system, that we won't have future entrepreneurs. So we're doing things in the education system that's going to be relevant to what you're just talking about. We have our own program called, for the last 12 years, called Next Generation Business Academy, where we teach business and financial literacy. Now, the reason that's relevant, obviously, when people think of tech, most people think of tech in being like a user or a consumer of tech. We're trying to change the mindset to have those kids become innovators, the people that'll kind of have a business in tech. Now, we've also started 2 other programs that are very new, and one's called It Takes a Village with STEM, and that's going to be relevant to what you're talking about, this ecosystem here, to put it together. It takes a village with STEM. By the name alone, you probably believe that, wow, we're saying we're going to get the entire community involved in getting to our kids from 1st grade through 12th grade, And then from 12th grade, it's a soft handoff to a program called Intern to Perm, where we get these kids into companies for internship. We believe that Silicon Valley, using that type of thought years ago, would have a plethora. We have a lot of kids that are not even graduating. They're right here. They're resources for Cisco, Intel, so they need to invest in that. Now, a citywide ecosystem for tech is very interesting because you have to have some elements that's really going to, kind of bring people together. And you talked about the, the cost of living. The cost of living has to be such that people want to come there. I mean, it's almost like chicken or the egg, which comes first. Does capital bring talent, or does talent bring capital? But we have to set these things up here. And not only in Silicon Valley, San Jose and Santa Clara is called Silicon Valley, but San Francisco, this whole region, we're now calling Silicon Valley. So I want to just leave with that there are some elements of support that needs to be there. Some have to be support organizations like ours that talk about how do you take somebody who's new and wants to be an entrepreneur and tap into this ecosystem of tech and make money. Everybody's not going to drive Uber cars forever, you know that. And then there's got to be, there's got to be investors, and there have to be people that want to put money into that, into what we're talking about doing. You're going to have, I want to say transportation. You got to have media. I'm thinking of all the things that's necessary to kind of create a good tech ecosystem. And I just wanted to make it relevant for what the chamber's trying to do.
Wonderful. Any one of you want to talk about it?
Yeah. I'm very fond of very simple solutions for big problems, right? So everything that we're talking about today is, of course, a big problem, but we need very simple solutions. And it starts with very small things that we can do every single day. One of the biggest things that we can do is when we talk about creating programs and starting from as young as possible from an introduction and an exposure standpoint. But when we talk about building programs in our community that is actually going to have impact, the programs actually need to take place in our community. And so what happens in South Florida, which I can speak about the most, is that if a resource is coming into the community and a student and their parent wants to be involved, it's not happening in Liberty City. It's not happening in Overtown. They have to cross the tracks in order to take advantage of that opportunity. So what happens to the mindset is that innovation and technology and creativity doesn't happen in my community. It happens somewhere else. And that's a huge problem because at the end of the day, what we want to do is build people up that actually take pride in their community, invest in their community, and build it up. And I think that's what the whole conversation about getting more minorities into tech is so that we build up our communities that we actually live in, so that we're not being pushed out of our communities because we can't impact it, and that's how gentrification happens, right? So this whole thing has an impact 360 degrees all the way around, but it really starts with it actually taking place in our community and so that we thrive in our community.
I think that's very, very important. Anybody?
And I think, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the things that we're big on at Impact Hub Oakland is not STEM, but STEAM. And we believe that the arts are at the core of imagination. And at the core of all of this is kids freeing their minds, people freeing their minds, being artistic, allowing themselves to know that we are inherently creative beings.
Yes.
And so much of it is snuffed out. And if we can really develop the arts, I mean, when I went to school, there was music classes. Everything was abundant. Everything was abundant, and now it's not so much. And so it's really, I think, about STEAM, because if we add the art in there and we really develop the arts and the imagination and the creativity, innovation spurs. And then it leads to all kinds of parts of the ecosystem. So we're really big on STEAM, and we have a real robust art part of our hub. And we really believe that it's always where the artist is where innovation is, always. And so that, to me, is really a very important part of the ecosystem, is to really put our awareness, our energy, our finances towards arts and STEAM.
Investing in our children, that's true. Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, so kind of piggyback off of what everyone just said. I think Nairobi is definitely a very different tech scene than Silicon Valley. When I arrived there a year and a half ago now, I was working for a VC originally, and back then there was a space called iHub. And iHub, it's the largest, hub in East Africa. So, but the issue there was that there was a huge lack of focus, and I saw this across the ecosystem where people were just trying to do too many things at once. Because more so than here, there's a lot of problems in Kenya, and people are just trying to solve problems across the board all at one time. So what we try to do is focus on one problem, and our problem was the lack of strong tech talent in Kenya and across Africa. So for us, that's worked really well so far. Since we began, we've added a lot of new initiatives to what we've originally done, but I think for us it was focusing on the core issue, doing that really, really well, and then considering other options.
So let me just ask you, because I happen to run the African Diaspora Network. So one question is, one of the things that we really wanted to see happen, whether it's the African diaspora or the Latino diaspora, how do you make sure that the knowledge that you have and you're trying to instill in that community stays in the community? That's another thing, because it's not only local, it's also global. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of well-meaning people, they go and invest their time and resources, and then the community that you leave behind have no way of completing what you started, because to begin with, they were not educated and knowledge was not transferred. So what do you do to create that ecosystem that can last longer time? Mm-hmm. Just tell me just a little bit to the group.
Yeah, of course. So for us, our huge focus is on education to employment. So with Moringa School, we have over 40 hiring partners now. So they're actually local tech companies. And we vet these companies to make sure that they are the best of the best companies in Kenya. And after our four-month program, all of our students have gotten jobs in these companies, so they accelerate their skills even more. We work with a lot of community partners, so just a ton of nonprofits, doing ICT for youth and unemployment and whatnot. So we work with them to go into local high schools. So we actually have our students mandatorily go and volunteer at these high schools to give back to the community. So maybe once or twice a week, they'll go into these high schools and teach something on HTML, CSS, something really simple just to get more excitement around tech.
Wonderful. So because we only have a small amount of time, I want to just completely open it to the audience, have your questions, and I'm hopeful that by the end of this discussion, we'll have one takeaway action. What can we do collectively and individually to make a difference in the community?
Can I piggyback off of that
Yes,
really quick?
Sure.
So I think jobs are important, right? Continuing and creating this pipeline is important, but I think the real impact that we're going to see in our community is really having a focus on aligning people with one, following their passion, but two, the actual skills to monetize their passion, especially when they're still young, especially when we're talking about young people. So if I'm training, and our program goes from 10 all the way to about 30 with 2 different programs that we have. If I'm training a 10-year-old, we're not really gonna reap the benefits of that as far as them getting into the pipeline for the next 8 years. But if we are training someone with the entrepreneurial skills, because tech allows us to move faster and cheaper than ever before, we can see an impact within weeks, sometimes months, sometimes 1 to 2 years. Right? So I think focusing so much on jobs when we talk about young people is almost a scapegoat for not being able to produce the results that we need right away to solve problems. And I think we really need to have that conversation, but more importantly, put that together with action and stop bullshitting people. We need people.
Say it.
No, I'm sorry to curse, but I just get tired of it. No, this is something that can happen now. We have some of the most smartest people in the world in this room at every single conference that we go to, and we constantly have conversations. You guys we can put drones that fly in the air that deliver drugs into prisons, then we can solve the diversity issue and our economic issue.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any additional? Yes.
How much economic development dollars are we seeing come into Hub Oakland? And I know I was there with you guys in Miami in July, and we were talking about, you all are making the difference. You're growing the entrepreneurs. You're supporting them on a day-to-day basis. And how are we seeing these economic development dollars, these community development dollars that are here in San Francisco, I know we have $800 million of that money that goes to job growth and small business. Are you all seeing any of those dollars? And I know that Dave's here from Miami. We're looking at how do we get those dollars to come and support you and the work that you're doing?
Who's from Miami?
No, I mean, I would say all the panelists, because what we're talking about doing is revamping a new model. And the support, you need private equity dollars. We spend a lot of time talking to VCs, right? But what we're really talking about is the program dollars that go in to keep the doors open at Hub Oakland, and that go to support those entrepreneurs that are there, and that go to support you and the work you're doing. And so how do we, I want to know if you're receiving that, and then how can we start talking about how we can be of support to you?
Yeah, that's a good question, Carla. And, as you know, no, we're not receiving that money. And it's like, supposedly it doesn't even exist, No, I know, but that's the story. And so it is the big dilemma. It is the big dilemma. And if I had the answer, I will tell you as soon as I do. And we would all be celebrating. But yeah, that is the big problem. That is a huge, huge gap right there.
Yeah, we aren't receiving any public dollars either, and we haven't in the past 2.5 years that we've been together. All of ours has come from private, essentially.
How about you?
For me?
The chamber?
We get no dollars from the city, from the state, from the government. For the last 2 years I've been chamber president, we've had to build that chamber like you would build a business. And I'm proud to say it, and if anybody does this, you can bless me. If you hashtag anything on Twitter, I guess it's #1chamber, because 2 weeks ago we were voted the best black chamber in the state of California. So that's something we did. So if you do that, that'll be good. It'll look good for me, right? But the challenge of what we're doing now is exactly what we're all really in this room trying to say, and you said it so right. There's so many brilliant people in Silicon Valley. We are all what? Problem solvers. But we need to collaborate a little more, even though we're building these ways of connecting with one another, because through that collaboration, we may be able to draw some money to the best programs, and we build models around that programs, and we change this dilemma of what it is. But I'll give you my card after this is over. Thank you.
I just have one thing to say, too, is that I want to make a correction. We did receive a small $50,000 grant from the SBA recently. But I think one of the things, what you're saying, is around collaboration. We say that word, collaboration. How hard is it to collaborate? I mean, really, it's really freaking hard to collaborate. And we're not collaborating because we're caring about our own 100% of the pie. And if we can really collaborate, it really means, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? Because ultimately, you're not giving it up. You're gaining. You're gaining. But we don't live that way. And until we do, we're going to be at these conferences, and we're going to talk, and we're going to talk, and we're going to yak, and we're going to talk about collaboration, and we're going to do, and then we all go home in our individual ways that we go home and look at our bank accounts and make sure that nothing's moving downward. And so it's really about us being able to have a whole nother, it's a new worldview. It's a new mindset. It's a new mindset.
Let me give you a wonderful, and it's a shout out to what people can do together. The hardest thing to do is to collaborate, but the best thing to do is also to collaborate. Yep. I'm going to say this because if you get a chance, look at Step Up Silicon Valley. In fact, my position is funded by Applied and Cisco at the highest amount, and it's a partnership between nonprofits, private sector, and really the backbone organization, and the founder is Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. Very few people know about what the charity organization that they have a different view of it, but it's actually a change agent, and they do many different things to really make sure that the systemic change happens to poverty and inequality. I say this because we created a platform of how to collaborate. And the reason you collaborate is because you put yourself away from the issue. You make the issue, and then so many great things can happen. I think we kind of get mixed up ourselves in the issue, and then we lose so much. But imagine what would happen if you remove yourself from the issue and you make everything about the issue. I think if we make everything about the community, the greater good of the community. And I really do believe that collaboration works, and intentional collaboration works even best. So we do have an opportunity, and I think this community has a great opportunity. There's a question?
this one might be mostly for Felecia since she's from outside this geographic area, but one thing I've noticed is that ecosystem building takes a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long-term investment. And another thing I've noticed talking to people who lead the communities in their cities is that they have a lot of talent leaving their city once they make it, coming to Silicon Valley. Some people call it the brain drain. So I was wondering, is that a problem you see, and how do you, I don't know, combat that? Like, what do you do about that in your area?
Oh, right. So I love you, Silicon Valley, but you were taking all our people, so I hate you at the same time. So talent retention, brain drain is a huge problem in South Florida, and it touches on a few different things. One, I would say within the last, I don't know, Mike, what do you think? Maybe 3 to 5 years, there's been a big, 3 years, there's been a big concentration on actually developing tech and startup ecosystem in South Florida. And that has been largely fueled by essentially a partner of ours, Knight Foundation, who has just been like throwing money at cool people, fun people, but more importantly, impactful people and programs in order to give us the funding that we need to do the work and have the impact in the community. But they are literally the only organization that does that. So the question constantly comes up, if Knight Foundation didn't exist, like, what are you guys going to do? And that's a problem that we haven't been able to solve. The other thing is, so many people are expecting so many things to happen so fast, and I constantly keep telling people, like, this has only been 3 years, right? I think Silicon Valley has been, what, maybe 30, 40 years, somewhere around that? That was largely fueled by the military coming here. So, so you have to have patience in order for the impact to happen in the community, right? So some things can happen really fast, but you also need to have patience. So we do see that, right? So the talent that and so the problem is the companies and the other parts that need to make up the ecosystem aren't coming fast enough for the amount of students that we're graduating out of boot camps and colleges, so that we can actually keep these people here in Miami and have an impact. They're coming here because this is the Mecca, right? And so we're trying to fix that, but unfortunately we're not able to fix that as fast as we can. But also doing our job to kind of attract that here, because the other thing that I don't think people talk about enough is that Silicon Valley is very small compared to the rest of the world. And so a lot of times the resources in the other community who happen to be your user base, right, or your talent pool, organizations aren't cultivating that talent in Miami, in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Detroit, in Missouri, in Wyoming, all those places. So that becomes a problem that communities and organizations need to focus on too, is making sure that you're sharing the resources so that you have a stronger user base. You also have a stronger talent pool that will come here, but then also be able to financially benefit so that they can take care of their communities as well.
We actually, we definitely have the issue in Kenya as well. So for us, it's more of a development issue where a lot of the developers that are hired, they get poached really easily since there's such a huge lack of quality developers. So for example, the World Bank or the UN, they'll poach these developers and pay them 3 to 5 times like the amount that any startup could. Even like big tech companies in Nairobi, they really struggle with this. So I mean, something that we're trying to figure out for us, going back to the job thing, we definitely are trying to get our students placed. So we're happy wherever they go if they're happy. But we do see it as a huge problem. And we know it will take time, so that the more students we get through our program, the more are available out there, so that their price will also be more fair to the companies.
Yeah, go ahead, and then after that, you.
Thank you. So one of the interesting things that we don't talk about a lot, and just drawing on from my own experience, is that it's great when we have these sort of programs or ecosystems in place, but a lot of the times it reaches someone, whether they're a person of color or someone in poverty, for the first time. But what about the sustainability of that access to those resources? We don't really talk about, it's great to get this young person and get them into STEM or STEAM, for that example. But once they leave the program, or once they leave that event in that particular day, how do we maintain that engagement? Because if it's something of, here's a fun one-time event to introduce you, the fact of the matter is if we don't maintain that engagement, they're not going to continue to learn and expand upon that experience and take it forward after that experience is done.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that that's a real issue. I mean, that's one of the things one of the issues I have with hackathons, is that I find them to be these really great high points, and then what happens? And unless there's follow through, and some of them do, and many don't. And I think that that's where the pipeline comes in that we're talking about, right? That's where the pipeline comes in, and that it continues, that there's these high moments of access, and then suddenly no access, right? No support. And so it's really about, when you talk about citywide, I think that it's incumbent upon us, all of us in this room, wherever we live, place-based initiatives where we can actually anchor where we live, figure out our ecosystem, and just get it started. And, collaboration takes a long time, the young man said. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that we buy that, and so it does take a long time. But I don't think it has to. I really don't. I think that finding right key people who are motivated and positioned, and to find and to work the ecosystem and really figure it out and create. There's so much talent. We have everything we need.
Yes.
We have everything we need.
Here's where I get in trouble. Last couple minutes. I'm going to say this. There is no citywide tech ecosystem today. Anybody believe that? What we're doing, like anything else though, the concept has been put out there, and sometimes even in the Bible, you speak it before you actually see it. And that's exactly what we're doing now. We're speaking it, and we're talking about it, and we're analyzing, we're taking a look at it. And just like entrepreneurs, you see a problem, a challenge, you look at it from all these different places. Pretty soon we may put something together, but there is no citywide ecosystem right now, but we're working on it.
Okay, so how do we create that? And I think I just want to go back to the point you just mentioned, and this is something for us to ponder, is that it doesn't only happen this in Silicon Valley or in the United States. Whenever you think about bringing, I'm going to say this, Africans to come here for emerging program or something, always remember when you send them back home, there's a huge disconnection between access and opportunity. Yeah. What they have gotten here, I'm telling you this from experience, for many people go there and they get depressed because they couldn't find the kind of resources that they were exposed to for a week or a month here in the United States. So it's something to think about, and it's the same thing. We bring them for a hackathon for a day, and these students, they get excited about creating this, and then how am I going to make this thing happen? Who's going to help me? I say this because a lot of you are from technology sector. I am not. But I can say this because I'm free to say these things. And I don't have to create them, but I can tell you the social challenge was trying to make social change. We must be aware of the challenge that we're also putting into some other people. So it's just to be conscious about it. I'm sorry, but there was another question over there. So. Oh.
Hi, yeah. My name's Elle, and I work at a startup here in the city, but I'm actually from Oakland originally, and I live there now. And so, yes, Oakland. But, I have this really weird feeling being from Oakland and working in tech. So a lot of people really hate all the tech people coming over to Oakland, and I sort of don't feel that way because I've seen a lot of things that have gotten better, right, in Oakland since I started growing up, right? You can walk the lake now. It's safe, right? So there's a lot of good that can come with it. But also, yeah, people get priced out of places and all this different stuff happens. So, we have talked about a lot of big ideas all day, but what are some concrete things that people can do coming from San Francisco or getting into the tech industry to bring the community up with them, right? Uplift everybody with them and make things better all around. What are some concrete ideas that we can do that aren't just big things and kind of the right now collaboration? Like, if I go back to the office on Monday, what can I say to people who are like, I want to move to Oakland from San Francisco? Great, but think about this one thing you could do if you move here. What are some of those suggestions you might have?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say plug into Impact Hub Oakland. Mentors, we need them. And we have a youth hub as well, where we have two spaces. We have the regular hub and the youth hub, but mentors. Plug into Impact Hub Oakland.
I can give you two really quick things. So Uber in South Florida, a few months ago, they held this big, all of a sudden there was this big diversity push, right? And they held this big event in the city of Miami Gardens, which happens to be our wealthiest black community in Miami, in the city of Miami, huh? Third largest, yeah, in the state. So we have about 13 targeted urban areas in South Florida. And so Uber had been around for a while, and then all of a sudden they had this big diversity push, and it was like, we're trying to get a more diverse pool of drivers, or whatever they said. But at no time have I seen in the 2 years or so that they've been here, have they ever said, we're trying to increase our vendor pool. We're going to show you how easy it is to work with us as a startup or as an entrepreneur. We're going to host an event that is going to give you the skills so that you can then one day be an Uber, right? So if you want to talk about a simple solution, don't just poach the community for drivers because it's short term. And I'm not picking out Uber. I love Uber, but when I saw that, it was, I took it from the airport yesterday, but when I saw when I saw that, to me it was alarming, because I said, as an organization, you can do more than that if you really truly care about the community. Not let them drive, but also put them on a pathway that they can start their own company at some point. That's how you're going to have real impact in our community. The other thing, when you're talking about things that you can do, one of the things that I started to do over this year is stop asking me to speak at your event. Stop, not this to that, right? But no, stop asking me to be a panelist. Stop asking me to speak at your event. Stop asking me to entertain you. Because but you can ask me those things if you are also at the same time asking me if I can be on your advisory board at your school, if I can be on the, or whatever, to actually do the work and partner with you in order to make those things happen. We gotta disrupt this, right? This is cool and it's great and it's fun and I can't wait to collaborate with some of you, but we gotta stop doing this and start getting into our communities and walking the streets and impacting people with the knowledge that you have. We don't do that enough. In South Florida, you can't reach out in the Black community and touch an investor if you need to. Those collision points don't happen very easily. You can't reach out and touch a programmer if you needed to in order to start your community. But if we all say, you know what, we're going to leave the rest of the day, and then we're going to actually go out into Oakland and we're all going to walk the streets and find some small business and do a mini hackathon while we're there, that's going to be impactful. Right? And those are the things that we have to start thinking about. Those are the simple solutions that it's a no-brainer to get on the bus, 20 of us, and just go to a business and hack it for there.
So I was told only one last question. Sorry. So you have been putting your hand out, so I have to go with you.
I guess I want to kind of, if it's going to be a solution and then it's also, if it's going to be a solution and then the opportunity to focus on what's going on here, I think this is almost like the first world problems. This is the difference between, well, do I keep the iPhone 6 or do I get the iPhone 6S? Because you're looking at everything that's going on directly in San Francisco and the Valley, but I haven't heard anybody talk about diversity as it focuses on the nation. So when are we going to start taking the Valley and San Francisco to challenge the companies here to actually implement outside of just here? Because if you're focusing on a place that the solutions are so small, and it kind of goes back to what Carla is saying, when do you request PayPal to go do speaking engagements on the East Coast where you have a higher diversity ratio? When do you make a request? Because without these end users, they don't have the service and they don't have the company. So when do you guys start challenging the companies here on the West Coast to actually implement something versus them just saying we have an in-house diversity plan?
Very interesting.
So I guess for us, we're more international. So that's definitely one of our main goals. That's why I'm here right now, because I am trying to bridge the gap between the West and Africa, right? So whatever that means, recently we've had Brian Chesky from Airbnb come to Kenya and actually speak with a ton of entrepreneurs. We've had some really big people come over, but like you said, that's not enough, right? It's not enough just to have someone come to our city, talk for a little bit, and go back. So one of my biggest pushes here is actually to get engaged with a lot more tech companies or investors or whoever, not even just for Moringa School's sake, but for the whole tech ecosystem in Kenya or across Africa. And it's burgeoning. There's mobile money, there's innovations that people are trying to make work here in the States but aren't working because it's a different market. There's a lot of exciting things happening, so I'm just trying to be able to convey that to people here. Yeah.
So I know we're supposed to finish, so let me just tell you, I have to do takeaway because otherwise there is no ending to this. What I heard is we need to mentor, we need to be proactive, We absolutely have to create and have a relationship. Nothing really ever happens without building relationship and building trust. So I do hope that to the fact that we want to do something in the community, we need to really start to get out of ourselves and start really believing something can happen. The other thing that I think you mentioned and so critical is that we need to demand, not just request, demand that if you're doing business in Africa, make sure that you have Africans in your board.
Amen.
If you happen to be
Amen.
doing business in Silicon Valley with the community, make sure that your corporation looks like the community you're serving.
Yeah.
We have a voice, and I hope that you use this kind of conference as a conduit to make change, but not to be talking head. So I'm an action woman, so I know. I think we need to do this, and I'm very grateful for this and grateful to all of you.
Thank you.
You should continue this discussion because you haven't opened it. Thank you.